And so what America voted for was America first, and transgender operas in Chile isn't exactly America first. And to say that USAID was simply...
You've said a lot of words, but you've said nothing. You haven't addressed the Constitution, the Supreme Court cases, the Impoundment Control Act, none of that. You can say that you don't think it's right to feed starving children in Africa. That's your prerogative.
Sam Seder just went head-to-head on Piers Morgan Uncensored with Jillian Michaels and far-right commentator Benny Johnson. We're going to check out some of the key moments from the show, and I'm definitely going to throw in my 2 cents. This one's packed with some intense exchanges, so let's dive right into it and break everything down.
Sam, let's talk for a moment about the other big thing that's going on, which is this whole Doge stuff with Elon Musk. You, I think, posted that the idea that Doge is in any way about efficiency is absolutely a joke. They're not doing an audit. They're destroying the apparatus of our government. What do you base that on?
Well, audits are done regularly of agencies by inspector generals. The first thing they did was to fire all those inspector generals and not replace them. A. B, audits that lead to firings within a couple of days are obviously not being done. The notion that this is about efficiency when you're laying off thousands of IRS agents, when it is well known that every dollar spent at the IRS returns for the government $6 or $7, you're clearly not talking about efficiency here as measured in any other way other than allowing wealthy people to get away with cheating on their taxes. I mean, I could go on, but there's absolutely no evidence that there's a single audit going on. To the extent that they've saved any money, it has been largely dismissed as clerical errors on their part, and we still have no substantiation about it. So it's
hang on. That's not true. I mean, some of the stuff that came out about USAID, for example, some of the way that American taxpayers' money was being squandered on ridiculous projects.
Oh, wait a second.
And it wasn't insignificant sums of money.
Wait a second. You can determine that you can have an opinion that it's squandered. I can have an opinion that it's squandered, but it's been appropriated by the Congress. And in America, we have actually both statutory, constitutional, and court cases that say the President of the United States and the executive branch cannot decide unilaterally that they're not going to appropriate money that Congress has appropriated. I mean, the line item video has been found to be unconstitutional. We have the Impoundment Control Act from 1974. We have Train v. New York City from 1974, which is a Supreme Court case which enforces that. What they're doing is fundamentally illegal. I mean, you may think that some of the spending is not worthy. I may think it's not worthy, but that's just not the way our government works.
Okay. Gillian, you were shaking your head there.
Because it doesn't seem that the government is working. As a layman, when the USAID is exposed in the fashion that it has been, and all of a sudden we have this transparency that we've never had in my lifetime.
None of this stuff was hidden at all. None of this stuff was hidden at all. It's just
so you're telling me that the average American knew that we were funding friggin' operas for trans people in who knows where?
If the average American was interested in what USAID was supporting, they could have just gone to the website.
Do you really believe that?
Yes,
do you really believe that people knew this and this was common knowledge? And there's no question that some of this was a slush fund for the CIA.
Well, actually, you know what? The truth is, you can both be right here.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
Sam is right that it was there to be found, and Gillian's right that absolutely nobody told the American people about the specifics. So actually, you can both be right.
What can happen in our process of government?
No, I understand. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying it wasn't there. I'm not saying it wasn't there to be found. But Benny, it was only when Elon Musk and his young team of guys with their sabers got into it, they found this stuff, right, and told people.
They didn't find it. They just they publicized it.
Well, exactly. But that's how the but Sam, that's how the American
authority.
That's how the American people found out about it.
Authority to cut it.
Yes.
So Congress, Republicans control every house of Congress. They control the presidency. They could pass a bill tomorrow saying, we don't want to fund these things. But what's happening when they cut USAID is you've got literally 400,000 meals for children who are technically wasting away. It's in Africa. Maybe my guests don't care about that. But the fact is that they're sitting in warehouses in Rhode Island and in Georgia right now, food that is pre-digested practically because these kids are starving, and it's sitting in warehouses. It's going bad, and they have no way to ship it.
Okay.
Because USAID has been shut down.
All right, Benny.
I'm sorry.
Benny?
That's not constitutional or legal.
Okay, Benny.
It's incredible. So I've heard the Constitution thrown around a lot here. All right, let's talk about Article 2 of the Constitution. The executive branch has a clause called the vesting clause. The vesting clause makes one single man that is elected by the whole American people the only position in the federal government that has the entire whole of the country elect him is the President of the United States, who is vested with the power to oversee the executive. And that includes congressional spending. That includes the functionaries of the government, including the commander in chief. There are appointed judges. There are elected at state and local levels, members of Congress, but only the president is elected by the whole American people. Now, I have a giant map in my studio. I don't know if your production team can pop me. There it is. This is what America decided in 2024 in a landslide, and with the popular vote, the whole
wasn't a landslide.
Whole of the American people decided to vest a single man, Donald Trump, to hunt down waste, fraud, and abuse. Because while maybe there are some type of programs that you might view as just, what I view as just is feeding the American people. What I view as just is filling the potholes, educating, healthcare, and the...
All right, let's unpack this for a minute. One thing that really gets me about these right-wing commentators like Benny Johnson is their sudden America First mantra. They claim they want all this money spent at home, right? But let's be real. They don't actually want to spend money on Americans at home or abroad. What they're truly after are those tax cuts for themselves. They couldn't care less if people are starving here or anywhere else. To them, if you're struggling, it's because you haven't pulled yourself up by your bootstraps or whatever nonsense they preach. Now imagine if we could slash the defense budget by like 50% and use that money to make sure nobody in America goes hungry or bankrupt from medical bills. Call it Medicare for all, Trump care, whatever. If everyone could just see a doctor without the fear of financial ruin, that would be real progress. But throw that idea at Benny Johnson, he'd scream communism, socialism, Marxism, whatever scare tactic label is trendy. I'm tired of this fake America First rhetoric from these right-wingers. They don't want to spend the money on actual helpful programs at home. Like Sam Seder points out, they're all about cutting SNAP, Medicaid, any program that benefits regular folks. And speaking of exposing nonsense, remember that whole debacle with the supposed $50 million for condoms in Gaza? Turned out to be a total mix-up, and yet, right-wingers like Benny ran with it as gospel. It just goes to show, a lot of what these guys push out there, you've got to take with a massive grain of salt. They don't care about the truth. They care about their narrative. So when they say America first, remember, it's only about putting their interests first, not the country's.
Capacity to serve Americans.
To cut food stamps.
And so what America voted for was America first, and transgender operas in Chile isn't exactly America first. And to say that USAID was simply...
You've said a lot of words, but you've said nothing. You haven't addressed the Constitution, the Supreme Court cases, the Impoundment Control Act, none of that. You can say that you don't think it's right to feed starving children in Africa. That's your prerogative.
Can we address the feed starving children?
Donald Trump, I can't believe you're going with the starving children. You're going with the starving children.
No, it does. I mean, it does other things that...
And the whole starving children thing, is that all you have, Sam, is starving children? We want our tax cuts. We don't give a damn about those starving children.
You don't.
All right, let me...
But it also does this.
Allow the lady in the room to speak, please.
USAID money spent.
Chat, let Gillian have her say.
On feeding starving children or a coup in Ukraine in 2014.
Guys, let Gillian speak for a moment. Gillian.
Big fan of
the
Jillian,
feeding starving children thing is such a frickin' red herring. So first of all, the vast majority of
How
this
so?
USAID bloat and corruption does not go to that. Second of all, we have children starving here in
denying that
America.
some
But
of it
third
that's
of all,
being
and what
cut
you
does?
don't know and what you have not looked into, okay, is that read a book. It's called Save 3 Lives, and it's by the Rodale family. And it has to do with the fact that our big ag companies went into the developed world to addict their soil to our GMO crops. It's a money laundering game. They can grow their crops in their soil far more efficiently and did for thousands of years before ConAgra and Cargill and Monsanto and ADM went in. You just don't know that because you haven't done your homework. So you're like, oh, there's children starving in Africa. When really, it is.
Jillian Michaels might not fully realize who she's dealing with when she's up against Sam Seder. The guy is seriously diligent about his research. On his show, he talks about pop culture topics because, let's face it, that's what pulls in viewers. But if he had it his way, Sam would dive deep into the nitty-gritty like actuarial tables and the intricacies of Social Security every single day. Whether you're a fan of Sam Seder or not, you can't accuse him of not doing his homework. He's always prepped and ready to go deep on any subject.
It's about billions of dollars going to big ag. That's what that's
I have
really
no
about.
doubt, and I
I've
have
seen
no
it
problem.
firsthand
I have no
when I went to
problem.
South
I
Sudan
have
and stayed at a
absolutely
refugee camp.
no
don't play your
problem.
starving children
have
card.
no-
I can't.
Well, listen, it's not my card. It's just simply the reality. And the fascinating thing
It
about
is your
this,
card, though.
Piers,
Your game is like
that
nobody's empathetic
we are
because
talking
children are
about-
starving.
We are
When
talking
that's
about
not what
let him
that's
respond,
really
Jillian.
about.
Let him respond.
USAID is a percentage point, like literally less than 1% of the U.S. budget. But because there is this
Why do you care so
attitude amongst the, well, frankly, it's not just USAID. I don't like them cutting the IRS. I don't like them cutting the EPA. I don't like them cutting Labor Department. I don't like them cutting the National Labor Relations Board. I don't like them cutting the FDA.
Do you like the level
the
of
USDA?
do you like the level of debt your country's in?
I don't think it's as much of a
$37
problem
trillion
as
in
you
debt.
do. But here we know the debt shot off like a rocket with the Bush tax cuts and then with the Trump tax cuts, and they want to extend those. And so if we want to deal with the debt, and if that's a genuine concern, we can go back to the time in this country where we had the greatest economic expansion during the 50s and the 60s, when we had a top tax marginal rate of 90% of every dollar that would be earned over $470,000. Today, it would be $3 million. And if these guys are very concerned about the debt and deficit, we have a way of raising that money. We can go back to the greatest economic time of this country. So if that's genuinely their concern, we have that power to do it. I mean, we're not spending, as a function of GDP, we're not spending significantly more per capita than we were in those years. The problem is that we don't have the revenue. There's been huge tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires and presided over by two Republican administrations over the past 20 years.
I've got to pause here because listening to Benny Johnson and Jillian Michaels is just too much for me at this point. Why do these right-wing commentators always have that smug, smirky look? Benny Johnson especially, with that goofy grin plastered on his face. Why are they always like that? And who do you think is worse on the smirk factor than Benny Johnson? But let's talk about what Sam Seder is getting at, because he's nailing some crucial points here. Remember when he was on Patrick Bet David's show a few years back? He talked about how the U.S. once had a marginal tax rate of 90% or more. Back then, we built the strongest, most prosperous middle class the world has ever seen. And big corporations, they used to pay a third of all taxes in the country during the 50s and 60s. But now, they're down to about 10%. When right-wingers balk at the term paying their fair share, this is exactly what they don't want to discuss. The wealthiest, who once paid sky-high tax rates, and the big corporations now bear a fraction of that burden. And guess who picks up the slack? It's us, the average folks who aren't raking in millions or running huge corporations. We're shouldering what they've shirked off. Let me know what you think about Sam Seder's appearance on Piers Morgan Uncensored and the points raised by Benny Johnson and Jillian Michaels. Hit like, and please subscribe if you haven't. My channel's nearing 60,000 subscribers, and I'm aiming for 100,000. If you appreciate the way I break down these discussions without giving clicks to Piers Morgan, let's keep this community growing. This is Cole Talk, and I'll catch you in the next video.